I'm Christiana from Preservation Buffalo Niagara, and today we're going to reglaze a wood window. Glazing is just an old-timey word for glass. So when we reglaze a window, we just mean that we're repairing and replacing a broken or damaged piece of glass. We are not going to have time today to talk about how to take your sash out of the wall, and we're not going to be able to go over some of the really common carpentry repairs that you might need to have, but take a look at the video notes and we'll have links to show you how to do all of those things. So before we can do any of this work, we got to make sure we have the supplies that we need, right? So obviously, first up, our window sash. We need some glass, obviously. You can go to the hardware store and just get a large sheet of it and cut it yourself to your specific dimensions, or you can bring those dimensions to the hardware store and have them cut that for you. Cutting glass really isn't that hard. There's a bunch of different types of glass cutters out there that you can have, and again, check out the video notes where we'll have some links for tips of how to cut glass. You'll obviously also need either some putty knives or a window tooling device. They have fancy kind of window putty knives like this that you can use. I just like a regular old putty knife that has a little bit of give into it. I think those are the best. You'll need a little bit of linseed oil. A tiny bit that you'll need for the windows if you're doing a bunch of windows, and obviously invest in a larger container like this one. We'll need some glazing compound, some window glazing compound or putty. You want to make sure that you're getting something that says window glazing or window compound on it. Do not use caulk or grout or any of those other types of materials that are meant for door jambs or things like that, or around your sink. You need to make sure you have a window type. And then we will need some glazing points. These are little tiny pieces of metal that help hold in the piece of glass to your window. There's a couple of different types out there, but they have all of these things at your neighborhood hardware store. It's time to reglaze a window. You ready? Okay, awesome. Step one, you're gonna clean, prep, and treat. The sash that we're using today is a multi-light sash, so you can see that there's several different openings for pieces of glass to go in that are created by these muntins right here. So we're only going to replace one of them today, but we want to scrape off all of the old glazing, all of the old window putty that's on there, any other debris that might be there, and you want to clean it and scrape off all of that garbage so it's nice and clean and ready for your new piece of glass. If someone had previously fixed this window and had used inappropriate type of material, not window glazing, they used a caulk or some other material, that's going to harden super, super duper hard. So you're definitely going to use a utility knife or sandpaper to get out something if somebody had incorrectly repaired it previously. When you're cleaning off your window, make sure to keep an eye out for those glazing points, the little tiny pieces of metal that hold the glass in. So you want to make sure not to cut yourself on those. You might need a pair of pliers to help pull those out if they're really stuck into the wood. After you've cleaned off your window, removed all of the old glazing points, the last thing you need to do is use a little bit of linseed oil on all of the wood area where the glass and new glazing compound is going to go. The reason you need a tiny bit of this oil on the wood is to treat it, okay? So your wood is dry, right? And the glazing compound that we're going to use to hold the window glass in is oily, it's moist, and so we want to have that layer of oil so all of that oil doesn't go right into the wood. If we don't have that little layer of oil separating the window from the glazing compound, then all that oil will soak in, that glazing compound will get dry way fast, and you'll have to do this whole thing all over again. Step two. You're going to bed the pane, place the glass, and put in the glazing points. And so that means, if you want to come in closer, you want to put a little bit of the glazing compound on this little ledge that the glass is going to sit on, okay? So this little ledge is called the rabbet, and you want to put just a tiny bit of the glazing compound in there so that when we drop our glass in, it kind of sits on it. The reason you can see that my glazing compound is not sticking to the wood very well is because I did not put on the linseed oil for this experiment right now, because I'm not actually going to put this window in my house. This is a dummy window. I'm not going to cover it with oil. But when you at home put your little bit of linseed oil on it and start putting the glazing compound on, it'll work much, much better than what you're seeing here right now. So we bedded the pane. Now we're going to put our glass on top. So there's two different types of glazing points that you can have. You have these that have a little tiny shelfy little thing popping up so you can push it in a little bit easier. So you just push it in that way and use your putty knife to squish it in. And then there's kind of the low rent version, which is just the plain slice of metal that you push in that way. Whatever is your preference for working, I like the little plain ones. Here's our very messy laid-in piece of glass on our bed of glazing. We got our glazing points that we're gonna squish in and push into the wood. When you're putting in the glazing points, you wanna make sure that you're not too tight on the glass, because remember, wood and glass are natural materials that expand and contract based on moisture. So you don't want that metal to be so strict on it that it could result in the glass cracking at a later point, but you still want it to be close enough that it holds that glass in while this glazing dries. For a small window like this, you really only need 2 glazing points probably per pane, but if you were doing a glass that was the whole entire window, one single pane, you would definitely want one every 8 to 10 inches. Step 3, it's putty time, putty time, putty time. What does that mean? We're gonna put our glazing putty, our glazing compound, and we're gonna fill up the top of it to make that sandwich of glazing between the piece of glass. We're gonna put our glazing compound on top to fill in this space, okay? Now when we're putting it in, you can put in as much as you want, as little as you want, but the key is that when we're done, we wanna make sure that the top edge of this is not higher than the edge of the rabbet, that wood on the other side. Because if we put this too high or too tall on this side, when we look through the other side of the window, we're gonna see the edge of that glazing compound. I prefer a kind of flexible flat putty knife to do this, but they do sell, specialty designed window putty knives that have this beveled edge here and then a really harder flat edge on this side. If that works better for you, obviously grab one of those. I just like to stick with a regular old putty knife. So what we're gonna do is come in close. And again, like I said, we want to make sure that the final putty is not higher than this edge of the rabbet, because if it's higher than the edge of the rabbet, then you're going to see it on the other side. So I think it's best and easiest to kind of start in the corner, and you want to squish down to the edge and the line that you want that putty to be at when you're done, and you're just going to maintain pressure and push down and slice away that extra putty. Sometimes it doesn't go away as smooth as you would like it, so we just scrape off that stuff that came out. And again, press a little bit harder and smooth out that putty. We have all of our nice sharp edges on our window. What we want to do now is just to briefly lift this up and cut away all of that bedding putty, so we have a nice clean window. And you can see right here how I've kind of made my putty a little bit too wide. See how it's kind of showing up on that edge there? So I actually should go back and scrape away some of my putty so it's a little bit finer. So you've laid out all of your putty, right? So it looks beautiful. You got your nice beveled edges around. And now you want to leave it alone and let it dry. It's going to take several days for it to cure fully. So you cannot expect to do this step and immediately put it back in your window. Because if you put it immediately back in your window, it hasn't dried yet. Your putty is going to slowly fall off your window. All right, so you've left it alone for step 4. You've let it cure and dry. Once it has that kind of seal to it, that it has a little bit of a hardness to it, then you're safe to do your priming and your painting on your window. Once you've primed and painted and that's dried, then you're all okay to put it back into your actual window frame. And that's the end. You've reglazed a window. Congratulations! Again, like we said at the beginning, Check out the video notes for links and extra guides to give you all the other information to go along with this window so that you're your most successful that you can be in reglazing your own wood window. Thanks. Have a great day. Come back to Preservation Buffalo Niagara with all of your preservation needs.